ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again for another episode of Cherry and Timber Talk. This is our fourth episode, and as you have guessed from the promos that we posted on social media, we spoke about 800, 708, and 619. So no prizes for guessing. The great Murali, Shane Warne, and Anil Kumble. And we incidentally, we got a feedback from one of our fans that we have spoken a lot about timber. What about the cherry? And you know what? You spoke and we heard you. And this episode is going to be about the cherry and specifically focusing on spin bowling. And none better to start off with than the great Muralitharan. So Yogesh, you had something to share on that.
With Muralitharan, right? 800 test wickets. Now, who would have imagined that somebody would actually one day get those number of wickets? I remember when I started following cricket and Kapil Dev was sort of, coming towards the end part of his career. And for him to actually, get past the tally of Richard Hadley and then get 400 wickets and then end up on 434, you were like, wow, that is massive, right? But then again, just as Kapil Dev was finishing, we probably saw the emergence of these three spinners. And, when you look at bowlers and you sort of look at fast bowlers with an sort of, romantic eye, and you don't quite sort of give spinners that much of a chance. Not at least, when you see them bowling in a country like India. So one of my earliest memories of Murli was actually seeing him bowl against the Indian cricket team in 1993. And seeing how convincingly Navjot Singh Sidhu used to step down the wicket and actually loft him over long on long of that sort of a region. And that time you sort of said, you could sort of guess that the kind of loop he had, the kind of turn he had, he was, there was all the makings of a good bowler, right? But not quite how great he would be. And then I think one of the greatest sort of achievements of Murli was that he turned the very controversy on its head. And when Australians called him for chucking and all of that, the umpires, Messrs. Emerson and Hare,
Mm-hmm.
the series between Sri Lanka and Australia is called, I think, Murli Warne series.
Yeah.
And that tells you that the very country that quoted controversy actually acknowledged how great Muralitharan's contribution to the game was.
Yeah.
Now, somebody as great as Steve Waugh once said, Muralitharan was the Don Bradman of bowling. What more compliment can you ask for, And throughout the career of Muttiah Muralitharan, you would have seen that he wasn't the backbone of the Sri Lankan bowling. He was the entire spine in that sense, He wasn't just the crucial part of it.
Yeah.
So when I was doing a little bit of a number crunching, etc., what I found was absolutely amazing. If you take away Murli's bowling against Zimbabwe and Bangladesh, he'd played more than 100 tests, 106 or something like that. He bowled 33% of all the balls bowled for Sri Lanka in those test matches. 106 test matches,
Wow.
he'd bowled 33%. In 33% of those balls, he'd claimed more than 40% of opposition wickets. So you see the contribution he was making. Out of the 10 batsmen, the 10 wickets that a test team had to get, Murli had taken 4 of those.
Wow.
Now that story was pretty much, consistent throughout his career. When you look at Murli, when he started and when it ended, the true support that Murli ever had from a bowling perspective on the other end was Chaminda Vaz. Apart from that, there wasn't really a Sri Lankan bowler who kind of, stood up and took load off Murli. So, one of the consistent sights you saw when you were watching Test cricket, Sri Lanka playing, was Murli bowling on one end and other, right? And when you compare that to somebody like Warne, Warne had support from greats like Glenn McGrath and Jason Gillespie and all of that. And then if you look at their sort of portion of wickets taken, if Murli's was 40% or more, Warne was about 28% and thereabouts.
Yep.
One of the other things is because Murli was bowling so much and because there wasn't quality support for him, he accounted for a bigger percentage of top order batsmen. So practically get the ball old first 5-10 overs and then go get Murli into action was pretty much the Sri Lanka's only game plan when it came to bowling. And that wasn't just at home, but it was in the subcontinent, it was elsewhere as well. And when you obviously look at Murli and you know how great he was in terms of his bowling, right?
Mm.
But bigger thing I also feel is that, just the mental strength that the person had to kind of, quote the controversy, and, where his very existence as a bowler was questioned, for him to hold his head high, to have the conviction, and then, to come, to go back, and prove the critics wrong.
Yep.
Right. And I think, that is where Murli was really great. Obviously, Murli played a huge role in Sri Lanka's resurgence as a cricket playing nation, as a test playing nation. So his
Yep.
contribution to Sri Lankan cricket as a whole, if you look at it, just absolutely amazing. And then
Incredible. Yep.
if in Sri Lanka, if they talk of him as one of the greatest players to have played cricket, I wouldn't hold it against them. And
Absolutely. Yep.
one of the sights that we all remember is Murli smiling, because he was just that kind of a
The
character,
smiling
right?
assassin, right?
You rarely
Yeah.
felt that he was under pressure. And
Yeah.
I just summarize saying, whenever Murli smiled on a cricket ground, Sri Lanka smiled as a nation, because they knew they were in good hands.
Super.
Absolutely. Well summed up, Yogesh.
Well said.
So let's talk about the biggest mental disintegrator of all times, Mahesh, Shane Warne. No better than Warne in terms of, getting into the opposition's head and, just mentally burning them out even
Yeah.
before physically getting them out, right?
So Shane Keith Warne, according to me, is the world's best leg spinner ever. And I say this because if you see all the ex-players, current players, and fans, when they chalk out their dream team, Warne is always a part in that team. Just goes to show the kind of impact he has had on both the cricket field as well as with the fans. He basically revived leg spin bowling and turned it to a virtual delight.
Yeah.
And he did that for almost 15 years. He started his career in 1992 against India and ended in 2007. And in all these years, he was just brilliant. In 1993, he actually announced his greatness with the ball of the century, as we all are aware of it. Right? He bowled a ball to Gatting, and the way Gatting was bowled, I mean, nobody had seen such a delivery ever. I mean, the ball drifted, pitched outside leg stump, spun right in front of the bat, and knocked off his off stump. And while Gatting was walking back to the pavilion, he was shaking his head because he just couldn't believe that he could get out in such a manner. Not only was he surprised, the crowd and the millions of spectators on television were watching it in utter disbelief, because nobody could even believe that he could get a wicket like that. That was the kind of impact he had in 1993. And that was not the last time that he did it.
Yeah.
He kept mesmerizing batsmen around the world. He embarrassed quite a few of them by the way they got out, between the legs, around the legs. He made a mockery out of batting, right? And then he also was one of the bowlers who actually got 37 times he got 5 wickets and more. And for somebody of that, we all know how difficult it is to bowl leg spin.
Yep.
It's one of the most difficult art. And he had solid control over it. If you look at it, his economy was very good. He just gave away 2.65 runs. And his average was 25.1416. He had less than 30 as his average with all the teams except India. So he might want to go back and correct that number probably at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So he basically had 4 types of balls: the leg spinner, the googly, the top spin, and the flipper. The most important thing is not having them. He knew when to use them and against whom to use what. That actually made Shane Warne very dangerous, because he would wait, he would keep watching when to bowl, and he would suddenly catch the batsman totally unaware. That's the reason why he was so successful. A lot of people have given their opinion about his best spell. To me, I don't think the 5-wicket hauls would come in my list of best performance. He bowled a brilliant spell in 2006 Ashes series in Adelaide, where he picked up 4 wickets for 49 runs in the second innings. That, according to me, actually told everybody what Shane Warne was. It was on day 4, at the end of day 4, England were about 100 runs ahead in the second innings with 9 wickets in hand, and everybody thought that the match was going for a draw. I mean, in fact, the Englishmen would have definitely decided that finally they could actually get a draw. One man in both the teams thought that Australia will win. It was not could win, it was will win. And that was Shane Warne. Because on dinner, he told Michael Clark that tomorrow Australia will win. Michael Clark himself, being such an optimistic person, was wondering there is no way that Australia can win that match because you need to get out 9 English wickets and then chase the score. And in the first innings, England had scored almost 500 runs. KP was in great form and all that thing. But come the hour, come the man. He took four crucial wickets. He, in fact, got Kevin Peterson clean bowled round his legs, very first ball. So that was the kind of thing that Shane Warne did.
Yep.
And who can forget the rivalry he had with Daryl Cullinan?
Oh my God!
To an extent that Daryl Cullinan did not know what was happening. He just couldn't pick Warne's flippers to an extent that every time he got out, he found himself in a very hopeless position. So he went to a psychologist to get himself rectified because he thought that he was a mental wreck at that time. He got treated, came back, and what happened at MCG on Boxing Day was he meets Shane Warne as he walks out to the middle, and Shane Warne asks him, what is the color of the couch at the psychologist's office? And that was it.
Yeah.
There goes Daryl Cullinan once again clean bowled by Shane Warne. So all these things go to show that he was a master.
Yeah.
I mean, he understood the trade well. He was mentally very strong, huge amount of self-belief, extremely confident.
Yep.
And all these things made him almost invincible.
Yep.
And probably as far as his captaincy is concerned, I think Australia did not have a captain that they should have had. To me, he was the greatest player for Australia in that era.
Absolutely.
How many captains could Australia have had? I wonder.
Yeah. I think leadership, if you ask me, comes naturally to them as well somewhere because, they're born and bred with a mindset of being competitive and confident and, just thinking positive all the time, right? So, and I think none better than Shane Warne when it comes to, turning a match on its head, so he's the guy to go to, right? So he
always believed that the next ball he's going to get a wicket. And that's the attitude. Yeah. When you have such a positive attitude, I'm sure that you will be successful. He took the inaugural edition of the IPL with a bunch of normal, just talented cricketers.
He made them believe that they could win. Yeah,
that is the hallmark of Shane Warne.
Absolutely. Great. So, last but not the least, Anil Kumble, the great legend from India. I think it's one of my favorite cricketers from India for sure. And as a bowler, we are a batting friendly and batting crazy nation, but not enough credit is given to bowlers. We always keep talking about the Fab Four and Fab Five in our generation, right? But I think Kumble was kind of, a part of the ecosystem, and he was always, when you spoke about Murli being the spine and the backbone, and I'm sure that Kumble was, he can be given that tag of being the backbone of the attack at home and away as well. So, if I have to summarize Kumble in 2 words, one has to be simplicity and second is discipline, right? I think he kept things simple. He did not have those variations or those magic deliveries like a Warne or say a Murali, right? But then his core strength was keeping it very, very simple, bowling wicket to wicket. When he started off, he started off with great pace and pushing the ball through. And, it was catching all the batsmen by surprise because leg spin bowling was never like that, right? It was, I think the great B.S. Chandrasekhar in India was probably closer to what Kumble used to bowl. But Kumble, he was wicket to wicket coming closer to the stumps. I remember once probably Jeffrey Boycott made a statement wherein, it's really hard for a batsman to maneuver the field and, find the gaps when a bowler is bowling closer to the stumps and bowling wicket to wicket. Because, if you see, when I don't know if you guys have played snooker or billiards, the easier balls to hit is the ones with the angle, right? But if it's hitting straight, those are the ones which are more tough to kind of get into the, box or the, in the goal. So that's something which is also applicable in cricket. When you're bowling in a straight line, wicket to wicket, it's really hard for a batsman to play across the line or maneuver the field. And that's something which Kumble had exploited. And he was really a master of bowling wicket to wicket straight, pushing it through until a time that people actually started playing him as an in-swing bowler. So they were thinking that, the ball is not turning. Let's play him with a straight bat. Let's start playing straight to him. It was really hard to sweep because of the pace which he bowled with. hard
True.
to cut and pull, because if you try that, you will be either out LBW or bowled. So that's something which he worked upon. And a lot of guys did not give him enough credit, because initially the overseas performances were not really that good in terms of comparison with home performances when it came to not just Kumble but even other Indian spinners and bowlers. But what I'll say is that it was not just the bowling alone; it was also the batting which used to lead India. It kind of let India down in those circumstances, because in the 90s, if you see, our average scores used to be like 150, 200, 250 when we were playing abroad. So I don't think it's justified for a spinner to be criticized when you're defending those kind of scores. Because, for a spinner, you need confidence, you need some runs in the kitty to attack, because, he was predominantly used as a stock bowler rather than a strike bowler. So that was the issue. And that gradually improved as and when Saurav Ganguly took over in 2000 and we had the Fab Four coming into the picture, right? So we started scoring more runs abroad. That's when the captain could attack with a spinner like Kumble. And I think after his shoulder surgery, he had a few issues and then he came back. And that's when he figured out different ways and means to kind of, counter modern day batsmen as well. Because he knew that his craft is such that, people will figure him out quickly. And they'll start playing him straight and, not take chances against those deliveries. But he developed that two-finger googly. He developed, a ball which he used to bowl from wide of the stumps so that, you could make the batsman play. And he also slowed his pace down a bit. So, those were the subtle variations which generally people miss out seeing on television. But then those are, the instincts and the discipline and the character of the man that, even being at such a level, he was constantly working on his craft and, consistently coming up with different variations, which are very, very subtle and not that easy to find out. So, so that was about Kumble for me. But the highlight, which obviously everybody knows, is that series in the West Indies, when he got hit on the jaw with a bouncer. And, till then I could actually never relate to somebody getting hit on the jaw and, breaking a jaw. So that was something which was very bizarre. And the way he was, completely bandaged from the top part of the skull. And, the way he came out and getting one of the best batsmen in the world, Brian Lara, out, LBW. And I remember he could not even appeal, right? He could not open his mouth to kind of shout or appeal. And he just, that was phenomenal. That was courage, discipline, and, the character of the man. So, so that was Anil Kumble for me. But then, let's hold on to our thoughts, guys, because, this show is also about a special guest. And, none better than that guy to speak about these three great legends. So, let's come back and hear from the horse's mouth. Okay, guys, welcome back. And as usual, we have a very special guest in this edition of Cherry and Timber Talk as well. And since the topic is more about the cherry part of it and spin bowling specifically, so we have a guy who has owned this craft and, he has played in that generation alongside these three greats. So welcome, Nilesh Kulkarni, our former India Test cricketer.
Thank you.
Great.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. Absolute pleasure for us and honor for us to have you on the show as well. So Nilesh, till now we have just spoken about how these three greats, from yesteryears, Murli, Shane Warne, and Kumble, how we see them as greats. We wanted to hear from the horse's mouth, and since you have played alongside each of them, with them or against them as well. So we just wanted to hear from you your thoughts about what do you make of these three greats, and we all had individual questions to ask you. So
Sure.
Maybe you could answer those questions from each of us as well.
Sure.
Great. So you want to start off with something? You wanted to say something, I believe.
Yeah, for me, it was an absolute pleasure to play with and against all three of them, especially because the way a lot of people talk about their achievements, but I would like to think that they were ahead of their time in thinking ability, implementing ability, and skills level ability. That's why these three were great in that particular era. That's why they could stand out. See, a lot of times people will only say about, oh, he bowled that beautiful ball, or he came up with that. But they were always thinking ahead of their own generation. And that's why they could create a space which they have created and left a brilliant impact for all of us to experience that personally or see it on television. And that's the reason I feel that they were great.
Absolutely. Yep. Agreed. So I just had one question. In terms of one individual quality in all three of them, which you feel from your standpoint, it was a standout, for each individual in that list.
See, let's start Shane Warne, and I'll finish with Kumble last.
Mm-hmm.
Shane Warne, when he started bowling, the quality which he had, he could spin the ball, which we all know. But the best part about him is the way he spun the ball with the drift was the most difficult part as a skill to have or possess. So for me, his ball would spin, his ball would drift, and his ball would dip as well. So these three processes was phenomenal to see as a quality in a bowler. And 90% of his wickets are on a leg spin. And for me, that's a hallmark of a bowler who knew what his strengths are. And at times, then he developed his flipper. Of course, his flipper was very effective. But very, very, very few times he bowled his googly.
Yep.
He got with his ability, with that leg spin, was phenomenal. And for me, that quality and that skill is right up there in terms of his ability as a leg spinner. And of course, the rest of the things which you can always talk about. Second person is Murli.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute glass. Such was his ability. But I have personally seen Muttiah Muralitharan. He was working on a doosra for almost 8 to 9 months before he started bowling that at international level. And I have seen that in the nets. He was trying to work on his doosra till he mastered like his off spin. Right. So again, that's a skill which even he could easily introduce that ball at international level once you start getting a grip. But he wanted to be absolutely sure before he could introduce that. See, for him, it was a lot easier to start experimenting because he was freak and he could come up and adapt and adjust himself with any variation he can introduce. But even for him, he did that after 8 to 9 months of practice in the nets. And he felt that it's now the time for him that he feels confident that at will, he will be able to bowl that particular ball. And that particular thing, in my opinion, is fantastic to learn from. Because no matter even if you have a talent, you still need to master the art and the craft before you actually introduce that. And that is something which, for me, as a standout point of Muralitharan. Now, I have very high regards for Anil Kumble purely because of the way his graft have been up and down. But one consistent factor Anil Kumble always had was his self-belief. And second is, he always knew his strengths and weaknesses. A lot of people criticized him that he's not a big spinner of the ball. So what? He got 600 plus wickets in Test cricket. So for me, Anil Kumble, as his mental ability to handle different situations and still overcome that. After 300 wickets, he introduced that finger ball.
Yeah.
So first 300 wickets, he always had that flipper, faster one, and his top spinner. Before we actually introduced that, which became a googly. So that's something which I personally feel is a quality right up there, mental ability and the quality. Because, you at international level, you are tested at every single step of yours. Yep. And he overcame all those hurdles with absolute excellence. And that's why I believe that I have a highest regard for Anil Kumble, because he knew what he had and what he needs to be delivered. And he consistently delivered. Imagine Anil Kumble in today's era with the front foot leg befores. He probably easily could have gone ahead to get 800 wickets.
Oh yes, with the DRS play, it would have been a completely different show, right?
India would have also won a few more series, I believe, also including down under,
Yeah,
absolute champion bowler, Anil Kumble.
Yeah, agree. Great. So Nilesh, Yogesh, you had a question?
The question I would like to ask you is, both Warne and Murli, for all of their greatness, right? They couldn't quite crack the India hurdle in that sense. Both sort of, averaged over 40 in terms of, how they performed in India. What do you think they might have done slightly differently for them to be a bit more successful in India?
One of the key areas where they could not achieve what they wanted to in India was largely due to the way Indian batsmen handled spinners. In
Right.
those era, India was master in playing spinners, and for me, that's the biggest attribute I would apply here for Indian batsmen's success against Warne and Muralitharan, because not only the mental part of it, but they could actually analyze and anticipate what's coming next. So
Right.
they were ready with their two options of shots to counter attack or defend them. So that was one big plus Indian batsmen had during that time. So you start from Navjot Singh Sidhu, he would just step out to all the bowlers. And as a bowler, that's something you're always, that puts you into two minds. And he would look to dominate. Vis-a-vis other players like Lakshman and Azharuddin and others, they would wait for a back foot to play the cut shot and a pull shot.
Yeah.
So then you have a margin of error is very, very small, very, very little for you. And that's personally, if you ask me, and of course, you can't talk about Sachin Tendulkar because he has everything. He's an institution in cricket, in my opinion. So he could dominate, he could defend, he could play on the back foot, he could play on the front foot. So he's, for me, is a complete package. So he's treated differently, and all the others are treated differently in this scenario.
Great, Mahesh.
Nilesh, do you have any interesting anecdote with either of the three?
Yes. In fact, I have one about Murli. In my debut test match, I remember I got a wicket on my first ball, and the day ended, and Murli had bowled 2 consecutive days. So, and incidentally, we were all staying on the same floor in Taj Samudra Hotel. So when we came back, both the buses came in, and as I was going in the lift, Murli said, "Oh, congratulations, and by the way, good luck for next 3 days." I did not understand why he said for next 3 days, because he had bowled for 2 days. He exactly knew what to expect, and I was in my complete youth exuberance, and I said, "What is he saying?" Little did I realize, after 3 days, it made me realize what he meant by saying good luck.
Oh my God, yeah. I think as Indians, we all want to forget that test match ever happened, right? Oh my God.
See, it's again a learning part.
Yeah.
People will talk about criticism. I would like to take that positively. You can learn from it.
Yeah, I agree.
Patience, perseverance, a lot of things you can learn from it.
Yeah.
So it's up to you how you look at it.
Absolutely. And I think it was an irony that, you got your first wicket with Addapattu, who had a horrid start to his career, right? So it was, a complete paradox of sorts.
My career is no different.
You're just being humble here. Great. So I think just one more question, Nilesh, before we end. Now that we've spoken about these 3 legends, I believe you also played in that series in 2001 against Australia, right? So how was it, in terms of the atmosphere in the dressing room after Kolkata, and even in that nail-biting finish in Chennai? That's something which we would want you to narrate about.
The best part of that, I say that a lot of people talk about situations. I personally felt that I'm sitting in a pressure cooker or in an oven where the steam is just coming up, because such was the pressure. And I remember one incident distinctly where Samir Dighe and Harbhajan Singh were batting to get 21 runs. And the only person in the dressing room left was me. And everyone around me was coming to me and telling me, "Nilesh, you have to do it. Huh? Make sure that you do it." And I am like freaking out in that situation. Some people shouting in the Chennai dressing room saying that, "Hey guy, you don't become the Maninder Singh because in that 80s Thai
Right,
test
test,
match,
yeah.
they reminded that also into my ear. I'm
Wow.
like, I just have to think about a focus. If I get the opportunity, what am I going to do? So I think it was quite funny now, but
Yeah.
at that point of time, it was pressure.
Oh,
But
yeah.
just one point I missed out
Mhm.
sharing with you.
Mhm.
I spoke about Muralitharan,
Mhm.
but with regards to Shane Warne,
Mhm.
I remember we played a match against him at CCI.
Yep.
I think
And
Tendulkar
Sanjay
scored a double
Manjrekar,
century.
double century. So
Hmm.
Sanjay Manjrekar, Vinod Kamli, and Sachin Tendulkar had played against Shane Warne before that.
Right.
So, they were giving us insights about how he's going to bowl. I went to bat
Mhm.
to Shane Warne, and he bowled two balls, which looked for me as a half volley, and it was a normal length ball.
Wow.
Whoa.
And that's the actual
Dip.
time I realized the strength of Shane Warne.
Yeah.
So it looked for me that it's coming like a half volley, but it was a length ball. And I tried
Mm.
to went for a boundary and it missed my stumps and my bat as well.
Wow.
So that such was the skill of Shane Warne when he bowled.
Yep. Yep.
And regards to Kumble,
Mhm.
I remember every single time, and I consider myself lucky to spend time with him because he was a bowler who I could relate to because he was 6'2", I was
Yeah.
6'4".
Yeah.
So every time I had certain challenges, Anil was one bowler I felt comfortable connecting and seeking an advice from
Hmm.
Nice.
because he would narrate and give me an advice based on my strengths and weakness because I was never a big spinner. So
Yep.
for me, he would make you feel absolute comfortable and then come up with those solutions and suggestions, which would become a lot easier.
Yep.
There were a couple of one days which we played, and he bowled before me. He would come to me and immediately give me a feedback, Nilesh, on this wicket, I think this is not happening. So you should not try and experiment with this. So when you're making a debut or a first couple of series, these kind of
It helps.
Yep.
senior person guiding you helps you a lot, and he made you feel comfortable in the dressing room, on the field as well, and that was
Mm.
something special. And that's why I have very high regards for Anil Kumble because he handhelded you a lot of times when you needed the most at international level.
Nice.
Excellent, Nilesh.
Super.
Great insights, Nilesh. So, Yogesh, last question.
Venu,
Yep.
last question, and this is comes slightly from left field. I'm going to
Yep.
ask you about when you played in that Mumbai cricket team. That could have easily be Team India. I mean, such was the strength of everybody who played in that area.
Yes.
Can you just talk to us in terms of what was it like to be part of that Mumbai team?
So the beauty of Mumbai team is when I played in those 90s was the least expectation every year we had was to win the Ranji Trophy. So if you lose one match, that means you're losing an opportunity. So
Yeah.
when you come with that pressure, each opportunity, if you do not capitalize, somebody else is waiting in the wing to replace you. So that pressure is different.
Yeah.
But the is phenomenal. So when we played against Australia, New Zealand, all the visiting teams, we always believed that we have the ability to beat them.
Right.
And that is because I remember one season in 94 especially, we won out of matches outright and we finished in 2.5 days. Such was the dominance of our team. And
Yep.
we complemented each other immensely. So I think it was the best time of best phase of Mumbai cricket where we dominated domestic cricket after a very long time and we consistently dominated. So whoever got replaced always performed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you didn't have to think about not getting injured, and B, you don't have the choice of not performing well.
Agreed. Yeah. Excellent
And they set
insight. Yeah.
high standards.
Yeah, absolutely, Nilesh. Great, Nilesh. So it was excellent having you on board, and I think you brought out some really, really good points and memories. And obviously, these are things which only an international cricket who was played at that level can bring out. So yeah, we are really lucky to have you here, and thank you so much for all your insights. And we would love to, have some comments from you on the show as well. And keep watching our shows, and it will be great if you could share it with your cricketing circle as well.
I will, and thank you very
Thank you.
much for having
Thank you very
me
much.
here. It was wonderful interacting with you all.
Lovely, Nilesh.
Thank you,
Our pleasure, our
Nilesh.
honor.
God bless.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.